Okay, great. And we will also share in a while our presentation as well. First of all, if you cannot hear us, let us know. You can write in the chat so to try to speak more loud, probably. We are very happy to have you here today. Just to introduce a little bit ourselves first, my name is Iris Papa. I'm the coordinator of the Children's Rights Help Desk here at Defense for Children International Greece. And with me today.
And hello from my side as well. My name is Nantina Tsekeri. I'm the director of the Defense for Children International in Greece. And we have been both highly engaged and involved in this project, the Become Safe initiative in Greece. And we're very happy to have you all with us today because it's been a long journey that lasted around 2 years. Many things have happened. The context has changed a lot from where we started. And we really feel the need to share with you our findings and some really important milestones along this journey. A little bit about the structure. We're going to share the screen with you. We're going to go through the different stages and phases of the project as it was implemented. We had to make a choice where to focus more in relation to this presentation, and we will mainly explore the work we had with the youth and the children themselves, as well as our trainings with the professionals. And briefly, we will discuss about the advocacy initiatives. So we will share the screen now. In the end, of course, you can ask questions, or you can also write in the chat. And later, we will introduce to you one of the professionals who took part in the trainings, Ms. Thematic, who is invited here later to join and present some insights from this training. You will also have the opportunity to ask some questions to her if you wish.
Okay, so I guess that now you're able to see the presentation.
We will be checking, we will do also the technical thing for this today. So we will be checking also if there are still people in the waiting room every now and then. So excuse us if we have to a little bit be distracted along the process because we have one laptop and we do this thing now.
Yes, let me check one. Okay, perfect. So I think that you all can see now our presentation. A few just to start with some very few words about the Become Safe project and the general objective of this project that was mainly is to improve the protection of migrant children but also young people, survivors of violence or at risk actually of violence, and to try to uphold their rights and to assistance and quality care in the European Union. So in order to achieve this and to try to make these structural changes and improvements in the law, this project actually, through this project, we worked together and hand in hand with children and young people on the move, but also with the professionals that are working in the migration system and that are in direct contact with this population. So this project is targeting actually, as we said, on the one hand, the professionals that are in contact with children and young people on the move. For instance, in reception centers, in the camps, in other accommodation facilities. And we are speaking about social workers, other NGO staff, professional working in the asylum office, for instance, lawyers. Professionals that are working in national child protection services, and of course, children and youth at risk of violence and exploitation. The first actually step of this project was the stakeholders analysis that we have completed. So we started with this kind of research in order to understand better and to have an overview about exactly what are the needs of professionals that are working in the field of child protection and migration, and to evaluate a little bit the gaps, the obstacles, the malpractices of the current national child protection system. And in order to have a clear overview of this, we tried to invite professionals from a wide spectrum, and including, as I said before, social workers, lawyers, educators, but also government officials, professionals working in the migration, and so on. I would like to point out that many professionals actually participated in our research, and also professionals working, for instance, case workers that conduct, for example, the interviews, the asylum interviews that our population has. And I would like to point out that unfortunately the police did not want to participate to participate in this research, and at the same time the public representatives from the public prosecutor's office also were not able, even if they were really interested in that, but they were not able to participate in this research because of their heavy workload, actually. So this research, actually, we gathered a little bit here the main findings and the main gaps and obstacles that the professionals working in this field have observed, and they really wanted to share with us. So the majority of them actually mentioned that the main problem in the national child protection system in Greece is its fragmentation and the scattered responsibility of the professionals. So basically, they mentioned that it is very problematic the way the system works, because there is no specific authority that can do, for instance, the whole case management of every case, that there is a weak cooperation because the different authorities, there is many obstacles when sharing information, and the main issue is that there is no specific structure regarding the child protection reporting. So they said that when they want, for instance, to report any incident of violence, to report a specific case, it's not, they don't have actually a clear picture of who is responsible, where they can do the report. There is no specific and efficient reporting mechanism. So that was the first problem, let's say.
If I may add,
yes, of course.
The underlying question in all these research that we conducted,
it was very actually it was very basic. There were very basic questions, but the results and the findings coming out, they made us once more enhance our realization from the work that we've been having through our help desk at a daily basis, that we speak about minimum standards deficiencies when it comes to the child protection system and the response and prevention to children that have experienced or are in risk of experiencing violence. And we say that because the main question that we posed was, okay, you have an incident of abuse or violation, or you have targeted population that are in risk. What is the process? What is the official protocol that the professional working in this and that authority, for those who were working in authorities and we interviewed them, or for the ones who work in the civil, in the third sector, in NGOs, in shelters, what is the protocol? What are the steps that you take in order to report the case or to prevent? We didn't really receive one coherent question. We didn't receive the same question twice, which for us was an amazing mirroring and reflection in terms of the lack, as it is now said, of coherent protection system with clear standards, clear procedures, clear channels, clear foundations in terms of who is responsible. What is the authority that is responsible? So this made us realize once more where we need to start from when we want to implement the Become Safe initiative in Greece in relation to the trauma and the violations experienced by children on the move. Another important issue to add here is that we realized that in order to address the issue and design later on our intervention, it was very, very critical for us to really convey a message that probably this project focuses on children in the context of migration, in the context of displacement. However, we need to step back and see what is the child protection system that corresponds to the needs of the entire population in Greece, rather than just going and trying to find out what is there for this specific target population of the project. And the sad realization was that there is no such a coherent protection system for anyone in the Greek state. So we really need to go back and see how we can equip the system in order to have the mechanism and the protocols and the training and capacity building amongst all professionals in state and non-state actors in terms of being able also to address the needs of this very vulnerable target population. So that was very clear to us. And this is also what led us later on to narrow down and decide to focus on the issue of institutional / structural violence against children on the move, which was the main topic that we addressed together with the youth and children and with the professionals. Another very interesting finding, Iris, was actually
the absence actually of guardians. And this is a problem that all professionals wanted to share with us, because in Greece, as they said, actually, it's been now more than 3 years that they are waiting for the implementation of the guardianship law finally to happen. And together with that is that, unfortunately, during all these kind of procedures, there is no a best interest assessment. And this is, as they said, quite problematic, because there is no an authority, a professional to be able to conduct what is the best for every child. So they really pointed out these two issues, the guardianship and the best interest assessment. They actually asked, you know, and all of them wanted to come together in the civil society and to really work on this and to try to put pressure on this kind of issue. And as also Nadina said before, and why we actually wanted to focus a little bit on the institutional and structural violence, it's because this came out, as we said, from the youth, because they really wanted to focus on that, sharing all these violations that they have experienced while they're living in Greece. But also this is something that the professionals themselves actually pointed out, that when we speak here in Greece for protection, the state seems to focus actually on the physical protection. And what they told us is that we really need to expand, not to only focus on the physical violence, but also to include protection that derives from bureaucracy, for instance, that the fact that there is no access to education. They really wanted to focus also on the empowerment of children. So basically they said, okay, we don't, let's not speak only about physical violence, because it's the first, you know, picture that we have when we discuss about what violence is, but really to focus on the institutional aspect of violence.
And also it was important that because it really changed the approach to the issue, and we really tried to initiate a discussion in the context of our country in relation to the broader definition of violence, and that having a fragmented child protection system in place It's actually a restriction and a deprivation of the procedural aspect of any right that can be found in the text of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is also national law. So we had to go one step back, and before discussing about the substance of the rights, to make sure, procedurally at least, that the state facilitates, the state enables the children to seek for protection. And this, in our view, it was actually it pointing towards the direction of the institutional violence and how we can see the signs of this and how we can work in relation to really mainstream the entire concept and see how we can work within this context in order to bring an impact. So for us, Become Safe initiative in Greece, it started with a very different view. We had different goals in the beginning, but after this research that we did and analysis, we understood that that was the need on the ground. And this is what we wanted to address.
So we will move now a little bit. As we said, during this project, we worked really close with the professionals on the one hand, and on the other hand with the children and youth on the move. So we will start, sorry, because, okay.
There's anyone in the waiting
yes.
room. Okay.
We need to check this as well. So we will start a little bit with the trainings with the professionals, just to give you the overview. We managed to conduct 5 trainings that took place actually both in Lesbos Island and in Athens. The topic was how to mitigate institutional violence. So we basically wanted to, because that was the need, as we discussed before, to speak a little bit about institutional violence. What is actually institutional violence? What are the forms that institutional violence can take? And what we as professionals can do about it, how we can mitigate institutional violence when we see this, happening in our daily practice. So in total, 141 professionals working in the field of migration have been trained this past year.
The trainings took place in 2 locations that we consider key locations in the country. One is the capital, Athens, and the second one was in one of the main border islands that serves as a gateway to Europe for thousands of unaccompanied and not only children on the move, which is the island of Lesbos. So that was also very good for us because already the response given is fragmented to the population of children on the move. So we managed to target both procedures and both locations where people come across this phenomenon. Of course, we will share a little bit of the insight for the training with the professionals. It was quite tough, I would say, topic, because the moment as professionals, we enter a discussion about institutional violence and our role to probably mitigate it, sometimes it develops some self-defense mechanisms because there is a guilt that comes along when we try our best to provide for the children that we work with. And then for reasons that are completely unrelated to our intention and best of efforts, we see that unfortunately, the system keeps failing them. So it was very, I would say, encouraging in a way to sit together and to acknowledge it, first of all, and accept it as a phenomenon that pops up in our daily life, no matter what are we doing. This was very key. We had discussions, round discussions, in order to really crack down the aspects of what it is, the definition, and if we have seen it coming across. Of course, that discussion could last for the entire training, actually could be focus on that, because in this and that and that and that, the professionals were coming up with so much experience. So actually, we somehow created an ecosystem where we felt safe enough to really release and say, yes, this that happened. And then professionals shared their own experiences of the moments that they felt they have done the best, but it was impossible for them to have an outcome. And then, of course, we did different exercises. The one you can tell about the real case.
Actually, we also had some case studies. So we discussed with the professionals some real cases that we in DCI Greece we have addressed in the past and brought change actually in the justice system. We discussed about lessons learned while attempting, you know, to heal the justice system and make it more friendly. Sorry, we received just a message that the slides are not changing. I hope we will fix this. But also, do you have the same problem? Is it fixed now?
It's not. You have to choose either by mouse, you know, it's slide. Otherwise, you have to put it on view.
Yes, we have. Thank you actually for sharing. We are on view now. What do you see the slide trainings with professionals?
No, we see the first slide, and then we see there is a column on the left with all the slides, you know, one under the other.
Wait a second. I don't know
There,
why.
there it is. Now we are.
Okay.
We are seeing. Okay, trainings with professionals. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I don't know. We have some technical issues here, unfortunately.
So now you see the slides changing, right?
Yes,
Good.
yes, everything's
Maybe
fine.
Iris, we can go back and show a little bit of the slides we have already shared. Okay,
this was about the research findings, and here
is the photo from one of the trainings we hold on Lesbos with the professionals, and the 5 trainings number and the 141 professionals. And now have just moved to the next slide.
Where we were discussing the expected outcomes, and we were also started sharing the way we actually organized and prepared this kind of training.
And the next one was now about the real cases, the training with the professionals.
Exactly. So we had these real cases where we actually shared with the professional two actually specific stories of young children that we have represented in the past through our Children's Rights Help Desk, and we tried through these stories first of all to see whether in this story that we have institutional violence, what are for instance the violations, and after that, after discussing this, the next step was to have, let's say, and to discuss about what could be the action, our action plan actually. We also shared some photos where we asked the professionals to see whether what we see is institutional violence or not. For instance, photos showing a camp, or photos showing homeless children.
I would like to add something here in relation to the action plans. So we divided the professionals in smaller groups. They worked on a real case that, as Iris said, we had addressed in the past. And then there, in the end, we grouped actually our intervention and our possibility to mitigate as professionals. One was really to develop a plan strategically to see how by working within the system, we can really mitigate institutional violence by having a strategy in relation what are the authorities that we're going to contact, the timeline, the follow-up, the language we use, the legal framework we invoke, the actions we take as professionals. We're not going to get into details because it's also very related to the Greek context, but that was very good. So we developed an action plan for all these cases. But in some other instances, there were people who said, unfortunately, it's very hard to do something that would invoke a structural change in relation to this specific aspect of the case. Then the professionals realize that they can also bring impact and somehow heal the trauma occurred by the institutional violence by the children's rights approach they can employ when they are in direct contact with the children. So there actually we also discussed our role as safeguarding sometimes the child-friendly justice system. They realized that probably we could not bring that change at that moment, but by really giving access to the child to proper information in a child-friendly way, by communicating and engaging the child in order to become an agent of change as well, by being empowered, by the safeguarding policies we have in our organizations. Sometimes we realize that even if we cannot achieve the big goal, step by step in our work as professionals in the daily life, and that was something really acknowledged not only by the professionals who work in the context of a legal representation or in shelters or social workers, but the people who work also in the camps or in big organizations that they act as actors in the camps. They said, yes, sometimes by really having a good relationship and a child rights approach, employment can really do something in relation to institutional violence. That was very key and really emerged at that point.
Yeah, so we basically discussed a little bit how we as professionals have actually the role of the mediator between the child and the authority. And even if we cannot bring instantly a very big change, a structural change, the way that we work together with the child and the way we cooperate with the other authorities can really have an impact on every child's life.
And of course, our role as watchdogs for the implementation of the rights of the child in the context that we are discussing today, by calling the different authorities of the state to really take on their responsibility in finding solutions. It's very key as well. The constant follow-up, but also involving the most competent authorities, such as for us in our Greek context, the role of the ombudsperson for children's rights and how strategically we can cooperate with these independent human rights organizations and bring a change as well in a structural level. And the very nice thing that was afterwards, some people piloted some of the things in their daily work, and they came back to us also during the evaluation forms, and they said how actually that discussion, even by discussing about this, made a little bit clearer in their mind their stand, their role, and some of the solutions that they can bring. I think at that point, maybe we can share the next slide and then invite one of the professionals who is here with us today and very warmly accepted our invitation to really have to give her the floor to present her engagement with these trainings and also the influence and impact had in her daily work. Before that, we would like to share a last thing that we did in the trainings. We created the so-called My Personal Journal on Mitigating Institutional Violence. We handed it over to the professionals, and we put the three different categories. A time I remember when I contributed on mitigating institutional violence as a professional. A time I remember I struggled to deal with institutional violence. Now looking back, what could I have done differently and what not? That was also very good. We gave this to each participant. They had the time to brainstorm, write on that, and then they came in smaller groups, they discussed, and that was also very healing and empowering for them in the end. And then also we had a kind of a journal to keep track on, for instance, once per week, once per month, every day. It depends on the person, how institutional violence manifested in my work today. It's very important to start by realizing that, okay, because we get so used to this phenomenon sometimes that we really don't realize that there is something related to institutional violence there. So first, what was the manifestation? Secondly, what can I do? What are my support resources? What are the colleagues that I can speak to? Who is the manager I can speak to? What are the other strategies and alliances I can develop? And later on, to really take care of myself before reaching burnout, which is very common when we deal with this kind of contexts. So that was very successful. They really enjoyed it, and we're also using it in our daily work, and we have seen the improvement. And now I think is the time to invite Miss Anthi Materi. She will she will give you some background information about herself, but we're very honored to have her with us today because she has really contributed in the legal representation of vulnerable children in the move. She's a young professional, not really, I mean, she's already exercising law for quite a few years, but she's one of the young people who can bring a change in their work. And we thank you for being with us today. I will give you my chair to sit and share with us.
Here is Anthi Materi. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I'm happy that I'm able to talk to all of you today and share my experiences to Iris and Nadina. My name is Anthi Materi, and I work as a lawyer based in Athens, specialized in criminal and refugee law. My first experience with refugee law was when I was a trainee lawyer, and my firm handled a case about 2 boys from Afghanistan. I was aware of human rights violations in our borders and camps, but this experience was very enlightening for me. For example, the younger boy, who was about 14 years old, he didn't even drink water in the whole procedure, even though the police officer was very polite with him because he was scared of the police. I tried for a very long time to gain his trust, and after months handling his case, he confessed to me that he was attacked inside the camp, and he almost lost his life. The problem in this situation, it's not only the attack, of course, but this boy was living with adults, not other minors, inside the camp. This case was the starting point for me to study and learn more about refugee law, what's happening with refugee policy, and how me as a lawyer, I can do the best to change the system and the situation. That's why I signed up for the institutional violence training by DCI Greece, and I'm very glad I did because it was a unique experience. First of all, we were people with a different academic and work background. Sorry, we are back. I don't know what is happening today. Anthi, you were telling us a little bit about your experience and why you decided to join institutional violence training. Because of my experience, from this experience that I told you earlier, I decided to sign up for the institutional violence training by DCI Greece, and I'm very glad I did because it was a unique experience. First of all, we were people with different academic and work backgrounds, such as social workers, teachers, translators, psychologists, psychiatrists, and of course lawyers, working with refugees and especially minors, and from different nationalities. And because of this diversity, I strongly believe that we did such productive conversations. Sadly, almost all of us, we hadn't realized that institutional violence exists. We had other forms of violence in our minds, such as sexual violence.
But we hadn't realized that institutional violence in many cases leads to other forms of violence. Also, we learn about the forms of institutional violence and how we can recognize them, because it's very important to recognize this type of violence. For example, the bureaucracy of the asylum procedure in Greece can take very, very long time. And you will need a lot of papers. And some of them, employees in the authorities are not qualified for this position. At this point, I have to inform you that Greek lawyers and Greeks in general, we believe that it's something normal to wait and wait and wait for legal procedure. And eventually we are accepting the situation, and we are becoming part of the system that we want to change, even when we don't realize it. We have to deal with a not a child-friendly justice system. Actually, it's not a human-friendly justice system at all at this point. Very important is that the professional working with refugees, we are not trained in trauma-informed approach, and we work with people with huge trauma. Co-workers in hotspots, camps, and shelters always tell me that they need more knowledge about how to approach people who suffer with trauma. And now about the institutional violence training. We were separated in small groups, studied real-life cases, and the trainers gave us all the tools to fight this type of violence. For example, advise us to work with children, directly, influence the structures in any way we can from our position. And the most helpful was the personal journal for us, the professionals. An extra bonus is that we created a strong network of professionals who are helping each other very often. At this point, I can confidently say that I'm better at my job. I can inform more of my colleagues about institutional violence and take action and do anything in our power to stop this type of violence. Thank you so much for your attention, and thank you, Iris and Nadina, for letting me speak about my experience.
Thank you very much, Anthony. It was very insightful, and we're very happy that you're here,
because it's important also for us, and we really need this feedback, and to see whether indeed this, because we also knew from the research and the discussion that we have that the professionals need more trainings, and it's important. And I would like also to ask you that, because you said before that the professionals are not trained usually. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Or do you receive any training from the state, or when working for how to work with children? What is the approach that you should have when working with children?
Unfortunately, no. The only thing that I'm trained is laws. I work with the law. I don't know how to address with people in general, especially children, that they need a special approach. We don't know how to deal with people with huge trauma, people on the move, and child on the move who have lost their families, who has experienced war. We don't know how to talk to them, how to explain to them the procedures. How to be helpful for them, not to tell them this is you have to go to this office, and this office. No, it's very important to be here for them and help them in many levels, not in legal level, because I'm a lawyer. That's it. It's important, the network that we created, because me as a lawyer, I don't have such knowledge, but social workers may have, and I can ask a social worker and psychologist how I can deal with this case, how can talk to this child. And with this training, we talked about a lot, and we're really helping each other in any case. And the other professionals ask us, okay, the law, how we can approach this in this way.
Thank you very much. And this is something that we also wanted through this kind of training, not only to speak about the concept of institutional violence, but also to bring professionals together, to share experiences, to exchange best practices, because I think this is something that also is very important. And thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Much appreciated. And
hello again. And also Ante will be traveling with us in January in Brussels, where we're holding with the other DCI national sections that we are partners in the project, the final event. So to be able also to ask also questions there. Also, I would like to say that for us as well, that we are the implementing partner in Greece of the Become Safe initiative. It was for us also very important, the creation of this cluster of support, because we reminded a little bit ourselves that we're all together in this. And structural institutional violence is a very big thing. But there are strategies, and when we cooperate together, we felt that we can have some results, and we have had some challenging cases coming up later, afterwards, that we made use of all this. And now I think we can move to our next topic, the next phase, I would say, the next big activity that was part of the Become Safe initiative project in Greece. And it was the actual work that we did with the children themselves and the young people.
I hope that you are able.
Bravo. Thank you, Martina from DCI Italy. She's doing our colleague there for confirming. So, yes.
So actually, yes, we will speak a little bit now about the training that we had with the youth facilitators. So we actually, and what was the aim? And the aim was, of course, to equip them with the tools and the knowledge in order for them to become youth facilitators and to be able then to go and to have sessions with the children. So there were 8 young people that participated in this training, and then they started, they became actually the youth facilitators of this project, and they ran later on consultations with children and young people on the move. So we started, of course, by setting a little bit the framework with them. So we had in the first place to discuss a little bit about some definitions. For instance, what is a youth facilitator? What is a child? So we started firstly with this kind of discussion, where we discussed a little bit if they know what is the child, and if they know, for instance, what are children's rights. And it was really quite interesting, the whole discussion, and because we saw that how young people, and these people were actually, young people were actually former unaccompanied minors.
Some of them still were.
Yes, exactly.
Half, I think they were.
So they really had, of course, to share their own experiences and to speak about how, if they had any right during this whole procedure and what were the violations. So it was really interesting, the whole discussion.
It was very eye-opening for us as well. Of course, we have realized that through our daily work, but to have this group of young people we went through the different rights in the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. It was really for us an experience, seeing in their eyes this spark. Then when we said, states are obliged to protect you in relation to this, this, and that. That for them was a very shocking realization, because somehow children on the move, don't really realize, first of all, the violations that occur to them are not random incidents. First of all, they're not guilty about, they're not responsible for what's happening to them, because this is also something that they carry sometimes, but it's a violation. So the norm and definition of violation of a right was something that we had to sit on that and really discuss it quite a lot. And the moment they realized that, then it was like an explosion of brainstorming, of sharing, and this happened to me, and that happened to me, and that happened to me. So that was a very key point in the discussion. And we realized how we need to start from 0 point when we want to train children to become youth facilitators in matters of related to violence.
Yes, and actually it was also really eye-opening to us, because we realized also, and they, for instance, what I want to say is that they even spoke about these cultural differences, let's say, and how different their country are approaching children's rights, and how here in Europe. So it was really interesting to hear for them, for example, that, okay, we speak now about children and youth and the age of 18, and here in Europe, in one day we become 18 and we become adults, and that means that we are not children anymore, and we don't have any right, and we end up again homeless. And they told us that we never thought that the age would be so important here in Europe. So they were telling us, for instance, that in their countries, the age does not play such a significant role. And that they were telling us also that the majority, they didn't know exactly what is their age, because in their country, it's not so much important. So we discussed a little bit about this, and they shared with us how the whole child protection system that we are discussing now is actually very hypocritical. That's actually the...
We have some quotes of them.
Yes,
here.
That's what they said, that it lasts only until 18. And what is the difference? They were telling us, okay, today I'm a child and tomorrow I'm not. And
also it was very, I would say, we of course, we tried to be very neutral in our approach and not to channel the discussion towards one direction, because the research that we conducted with the professionals showed us clearly that institutional violence is the big gap. Then we wanted to see what they feel is the topic they want to focus. So we gave them the chance to, we split them in 2 groups, and then they went and they brainstormed, and they had a task to come back to the audience and really share what is the main topic that they want to choose in order to go deeper in that. And later on go in their communities and speak about that, but also we had an advocacy component attached to the work with the youth. We were having an aim to create some advocacy material with them as well, and they had to choose one of the topics. And we were quite astonished by the fact, we were expecting them, because the majority of them have experienced serious forms of violence, to really tell about that incident that happened in the journey back in the country, or some other things, but they really pointed out the institutional violence. So it came up from them as well. They were saying, we didn't have a translator, we didn't have access to a lawyer, we didn't have access to proper information. I missed out the deadline for my family reunification, for instance, about the reception conditions and how they were not living in a context of a dignified life. So also they came up with this. And when we explained them that this is also what came up from the side of professionals, they were very happy, and it was a very great match, I would say, in relation to that. So they focused and they said, this is what we want to explain, that we don't have the procedural access to exercise our right to education, our right to safety, our right to accommodation, to protection.
And also they spoke also a lot about the discrimination, and that they realized while living here in Greece how the state and the people treat them so different. And what are all these things, and this is something that also they decided to focus on when they were creating actually their advocacy material.
So they felt a little bit that they are conceived as second category of young people, and they don't have the same access. This is what came up from them,
And this is where they wanted to focus their advocacy on. That probably things that are for granted for other citizens, the Greek citizens, for instance, that are present in the country, they were not granted for them. And they wanted to really focus on that when they decided to really play as kind of a small play, very small play, and then to record it and create a video about that.
I think we have the video.
Yes, I will.
And we can share it with you.
And they used that later on in their information sessions within their communities, because they had as facilitators to run trainings on themselves. So they used that a lot as a starting point for the conversation that they wanted to provoke and develop. So we will share it now with you. I hope you can see.
Yes, please let us know if you are able to. Can you see the video? No, okay.
No.
Wait. Now?
Yes,
Perfect.
but there is no sound.
Yes.
You should share the sound as well.
It will come.
It will come in a while.
There is no sound. Is that normal?
No, it has sound at least, but I don't know why.
So it didn't play at all the sound?
At all. If you go to Zoom, you have to share the sound as well. On the share screen, share sound as well.
Yeah. Yes. It says.
It doesn't let us actually. We have done it. Give us 1 more minute to see if we can do something about that. Maybe I don't.
For the sound and
Όχι.
Από κάτω που λέει share screen, από κάτω που λέει share screen, είστε στο audio. Από κάτω, μπράβο, εκεί.
το βλέπουμε κάπου.
Δεν το βλέπουμε. It's okay. We can send it later to you Okay, and you can see, at least we can scroll a little bit and see. So this is, we can describe it with words probably. So this is the first part where they're discussing between them. These are the children on the move in the country, and they're discussing about their problems in their daily life. They're struggling about lack to access documentation. And this is something that really jeopardizes the entire development. And then they're discussing about access to education, which is not something for granted, and their protection, where they live and how they live and what they're doing. But they focus a lot on the development as young people, that they feel they are excluded, discriminated, and with their own words, because it literally, believe us, we didn't intervene at all. We let them really put the words they wanted, whatever they wanted to show. They show that we feel that at that critical age, we were, because of the discrimination we're experiencing, because there's no child protection system to protect us from that, we cannot access what is supposed to be accessing once we become adults. And then in the second slide, you better win, here the other half of the group, maybe we can see here, they discuss, they're meeting in a park, and they have a completely different kind of conversation between them. They worry about their studies and in which university, and they want to go for a master. So here Neda was telling, for example, I really want to go to France, but my parents prefer to go to the UK for studies. And also later on, we're speaking about some of the some competitions
that they have
for mathematics, how well they go in sports, and how stressed they are for this. And these are discussions they brought up, but and somehow they imitated the conversations they have heard from other children, Greek children, that they were at the same age with them, in the communities they shared, in the parks. So really they felt it's the moment to really show that we were discussing the same things, and all the protection coming from a family environment that they were deprived of and couldn't find in a state context. So it's a very interesting discussion there that shows the dichotomy, if you compare with the previous one, and the very different worries they have, although the topic is the same. What I'm going to do once I turn 18, and how I have the chance to really go for these dreams. And in the end, we see that in the number 3 slide, we see that probably there they come all together in the end as a big group, and they decide actually to each one of them to say a quote. For instance, youth need safety, education, and then in the end they ask if we can hear them. So that's a little bit of the concept they created, and after all this process of the training and discussions, they came up with that, and then they used this. Maybe we can share the screen and see if now you can see.
I will try again. And actually, this is the video that they use afterwards with when they had the consultations with other children. So they really shared this video in order for the other children and young people to start discussing about their rights, about the violations. So that was the basis actually of the discussions. And in this kind of consultation sessions, more than 100 children and young people have participated in the sessions, and we focused, of course, as we said before, on the rights and the violations, and that was the first part actually, while in the second part, the youth facilitators wanted a little bit, to empower them. So they didn't want only to focus on the struggles, but also in the achievements. So they were speaking a little bit how important it is, regardless what you're facing at the moment, to really focus also on yourself, to have faith, and also to try in the meantime and to try to to, you know, to find ways in order to let's see, to work a little bit on yourself and to try in order to start building slowly
So
your
actually they
future.
picked as one of the methods storytelling, success stories within the community, and to use them as a landmark example of they said institutional violence exists. This is the rights, the violations we have, the structures, the support mechanisms, because they hand it out also a channel of organizations, stakeholders that can support them and so on. But then also they really wanted to give space to acknowledgement of the difficulties, but also to really discuss in their communities about things that worked well for them while they were struggling. So what are the tools, the coping mechanisms they could develop, the resilience they had, and the focus they had. And that was also very important in the end. And they created also their own communities of support, and they kept exchanging. They kept exchanging information, advices, and also for us, because we have trained the youth facilitators, and we had afterwards sessions with them after each consultation they hold, how they experienced that, how they felt that in their role as facilitators. It was very good for them. First of all, they developed skills for a life, as they said, that we feel more confident that we can work on such things in future, they said. But also they felt that they contributed essentially to their community. And they could see their role and the impact in their community, and also how empowering it was for themselves as well, to hearing from others and also to support. The next slide is about, I would like to share a little bit about the challenges here in relation to that. So the project aimed for a very big number of children to reach out, and a very big number of children to that they reside in the shelters. It was very challenging in the implementation process. First of all, due to COVID, when we designed the Become Safe project, of course, it was before COVID, so we had to really postpone many of the things that we had in schedule and reach out to them. So we had many restrictions in entering unsafe zones, but also shelters to run the sessions. So we had to adjust. Also, we had to do online some things and work on that. On the other hand, we had also another development. In the last, I would say, 1 year and a half, there have been so many cases that they have that they reached publicity, and these are big scandals of pedophiles that they had a way of implementing projects in partnership with some shelters, and some very bad things happened in the context of such programs. These people have been persecuted and they have brought before the justice. Some of them are also detained, but as you can understand, that made the shelters being much more introvert and not being very, very willing to accommodate such projects within their premises. So that was a big challenge for us. It was not a very good momentum, but we managed to navigate through and find ways in order to be able to implement our project. We work a lot with shelters, but also with the communities and the children who are also out in the streets or they live in shared apartments. So we found our ways, but that was also a big, I would say, element also the deficiency of the child protection system, how we as professionals sometimes when these things happen, we feel left alone. And also we feel we become so much introvert and self-defensive because we don't have the means to seek for support from a due child protection system as well. So that was something that we want to highlight in relation to the implementation. And one last thing which is not part of this presentation, it's the advocacy component, because the final step and the final activity is how all of this can lead to a structural change or to actually trigger a constructive dialogue. And we are still working on that, but we can share some of the
good results already, and some of the things that are coming in the next months. We have created a cluster of organizations and professionals, experts working on the issue. We have decided to focus on institutional violence, but more specifically on the remedy mechanisms. So when this occurs, what are the remedy mechanisms? And we are aiming to start a campaign. So this has made also our project sustainable in future. So we will continue working in the echo, I would say, of the work done. No right without remedy will be called the campaign. And we will be running this in cooperation with the independent human rights organization specializing in Greece in children's rights. And we have already had some roundtables, and all this will lead to a big event that we're going to invite political persons, key stakeholders. We are in, I would say, we're going to have elections soon in the country, so it's a very good momentum to start really triggering this conversation around the child protection system, the budget allocation, and how we are aiming strategically to address it, and to ask for some commitments and answers from the government and all the political parties. So we're at that stage in relation to the advocacy component. Some of the youth facilitators are going to be present and participate very actively in all these discussions that are going to happen in January, and to continue later on out of the context of the project, but they started from there. And I think for us to share our own experience also has been a very, I would say, interesting journey. It was a project with the challenges, as we said before, with so many different things, trying to put them all together and bring them together under a common umbrella, under a topic, because the issue of violence is so big and the issue of protection. So we feel that at least we tried our best to really identify the one of the gaps, one of the things that we haven't focused that much as a civil society and as a state, and that for us was the institutional violence. And we have created clusters, both with professionals, both with young people. We have created a good link, and I think from that we can move on later on. This from me, and I don't know, Iris, if you want to have some concluding remarks as well.
Yes, actually, it was very, as you said, in the beginning, it
felt, a little bit overwhelming because the concept of violence is very broad. But I guess in reality, in practice, we saw that, okay, we have, professionals and us and the young people. We had probably, without maybe even knowing it in the first place, that we have maybe the same goal, to have a change and to fight institutional violence. And I believe that really this project helped us a lot. And what is coming with the campaign, I'm hopeful that it will bring some change.
Also, we forgot to mention that along the process, we had some key meetings with our partners from the other countries, the other DCI national sections, but also the other partner organizations, such as the Third Zone. And we received also training on how to conduct these trainings. We shared some best practices, but also challenges, because all of us were coming out of the COVID. It was in the middle of the COVID, but also after COVID era. So we also shared quite similar challenges, and also the community of the project helped us as well to set up our own national communities. And somewhere here, I think we can say that we can close this presentation here of the Become Safe initiative in Greece. And if someone wants to ask a question or to share a comment or something, feel free. We have some minutes left. We want to see, or someone to write something in the chat if wishes or not. There is a hand raised by Alexandros Gomez. Yes, Alex, you have the floor.
So just a moment,
Yeah.
just a moment, because I'm trying to figure this up. Okay, so here it is. Thank you for your presentation. I am one of the participants I actually had a seminar this fall, and I was quite excited because as a psychologist who worked a lot with groups such as not only refugees but LGBT people and everything that and other social groups that are actually experiencing um, uh, ostracism sometimes, which is a very hard social phenomenon. I have to just say that since the early 2000s, a new branch of psychology started, which is called social justice therapy or counseling. And that's, not demands, but actually points out that as therapists and as counselors, sometimes we have to recognize what causes the problems to our clients, not only help the clients as individuals. It's not very, well developed, and my participation to this training really helped me understand and actually name some things such as institutional violence. And I'm really glad that somebody actually is working with that. And I look forward to see more in the future from your organization regarding that, because it's something that is really missing at the moment from Greece. And I truly believe that if there is someone to lead, many will follow. At least from my specialty, in my field of specialty talking, yes, I think that a lot of people will be very interested because we do want to do something. We know that ignoring these things, these factors, is actually a choice of us as therapists, and we don't want to make these choices anymore, to ignore it, or not at least not feel in despair or powerless sometimes. So yes, social justice is something we need to really focus on, and if you do that, we're definitely gonna follow. Thank you for your training. It's good that you raised awareness with that, but please continue. That's what I would like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex, very much for this. It's also very important for us to hear that the ones who participated, and that was the feedback given from the evaluation forms, they felt that that was just an appetizer. They felt we need more. We have the appetite for more of that. So we want to commit to this. We think it's a universal issue, but it's very good to keep developing strategies of how to approach it and to mainstream it also and to bring it in our daily work, because as very well you said, Alex, the social, the roots and the causes of the trauma can be found in the context of a social context, political context, structural context. And sometimes we keep forgetting that, and it's very good and for us and for our beneficiaries in doing this. So thank you for this intervention. We have in the chat, thank you from Bilge Kan Ozkan. From Turkey, thank you very much for your contributions and the webinar for GCI and Child Protection Hub. Love from Turkey. Thank you very much for participating. We hope that we will be able to design more projects in relation to this topic and also to continue working on that, not in Greece, but also we hope with the partners from the other countries as well, since it is a common issue. I don't know if someone else wants to say anything before we close. It will be recorded, of course, but you can revisit it again. I don't see some. Okay, so we will wish to everyone a good closure of the year. I know how busy all of us we are in the last weeks before the Christmas season to really finish everything, like the world is ending. So thank you for making the space today and be with us. We really appreciate it. Also, Arvanida, Aravinda says, thank you for your sharing, your work, very interesting. Thank you for being with us today, and hope to see you again in, a similar kind of training presentations, or to cross paths in any way again together. Thank you very much. Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We see you in Brussels.
Bye.
Ciao.
See you in Brussels, Martina.
Ciao,
Bye.
ciao. Bye.
Bye.